Good morning, everybody. Morning. Right, how on earth am I going to top what's happened here this morning? I really don't know. But I will do. Okay. Okay, so good morning to you. This morning we're going to continue the overall theme that we've been pursuing through this year of faith. And we've all had a different angle on it, and I came to researching for this, and I thought, how on earth am I going to find something new that hasn't already been talked about, or something that I can bring to it? So really, this morning, I want to bring my take on the faith side of things. And I'm going to divide it into two sections, basically. We're going to go Old Testament, start off with, and then we're going to come right up to date. And in that section, when we come right up to date, I'm going to have to put myself out there a bit. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask you to bear with me, and we'll see where this goes. So the title of today's preach is Your Money or Your Life. Now, when you first hear that, the first thing that conjures up is highwaymen on Dick Turpin, cloak, mask on, hat, horse, all this kind of thing, stagecoaches. And today, it's like I said, it's going to be two parts. So you immediately think of a highwayman, and it's not difficult to think of highwaymen at the moment because we're all used to wearing masks. When else can you go into a bank with a mask on and demand money? No. That's how it works. So it's called Your Money or Your Life, but it's my take on that. So we're going to start Old Testament. We're going to go back to Daniel. Daniel in the Bible, the book of Daniel, and Daniel as a person. Now he was born in 620 BC, and he died in 538 BC, so he lived for about 82 years. Now the thing I had a problem getting my head around was, hang on a minute, that's a lower number. What's going on? And you need to remember that when you go past the birth of Christ, when you go back to before Christ, everything runs backwards in time. The numbers run backwards. So he didn't die before he was born. He died 82 years. He was born in 620 BC and died in 538 BC. He lived for about 82 years, and he was born in Judah. Now, when he was aged about 15 years, in 605 BC, he was captured and deported by Babylonian forces. The Babylonian forces attacked Judah, and they conquered it, and they took people from Judah back to Babylon. So the Babylon forces took him and thousands of people from Judah back to Babylon. And Daniel was one of a group of people because he was actually a good-looking guy. He was a young lad, 15 years of age, and he was a good-looking guy. He was mentally very smart, very adept, very switched on, very intelligent young man. And they quickly decided, we've got use for this guy in the royal household, in government, in royal household. But before we can do anything with him, we need to train him. So people like Daniel went through a 3-year period where they were trained to find out whether they were suitable to be used in the royal household and in government. So he was taken against his will, captured and deported under King Nebuchadnezzar's dominance. And it's similar to a Joseph story. He was taken out from where he was and taken on a journey that accelerated him, promoted him, and took him to somewhere he never thought he'd ever be. So he's a good-looking lad, smart and clever, and he was marched 500 miles to Babylon on the Euphrates River. He was trained for 3 years to serve the government and royalty, and he served in this way for about 70 years, 60, 70 years. It's a long time in servitude. He had a gift of interpreting dreams and visions, and he made his way higher and higher up in society. But he didn't conform to the Babylonian ways. He did not conform to their worship of other gods. He did not conform to their ways of thinking. He maintained, and all through his life, kept his heart pure to God. The same God then, the same God today, the same God forever. He conformed and decided, no, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I'm going to be true to God, and I'm going to do everything that he tells me to do, and I'm not going to conform to what I'm told that I must believe. I'm not going to conform to what I must worship, what I must do, how I must do that. He was in a foreign land of unbelievers, but his worship to God was paramount. He was vegetarian. and refused wine or alcohol. There's a situation. He was actually friends with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We know of those three. So they were all party of the same group. So he shared time and their energies. And as part of that group, he didn't want to eat what the king was saying that they had to eat. He didn't want to eat meat. He didn't want to drink wine. And he said to those people responsible for training him, looking after him, making him do the things in the palace and for government, he said to the people in charge, look, please, don't give us meat, don't give us wine, give us vegetables and water, that's all we want. And the people in charge said, well, if we do that, the king's going to get really upset. And we don't want to upset the king because that's not a good thing to do. And he said, well, look, give us 10 days. Let's just try this. Give us 10 days when you just give us vegetables and water and see how much better looking, more healthy, more vibrant than we are than those people who don't want this and they want to continue having the meat and the wine. So that took place. And the authorities could see that Daniel and the group that he was with were radiant. They were more healthy, they were more benefited. So that he was actually able to change the whole eating regime of those So we need to move forward now to 539 BC. And this is all covered in Daniel 5, the book of Daniel, Daniel 5. So he's already been very good at understanding people's dreams, understanding visions that have happened to people, understanding things that have happened to himself. He's already been approached by the king, Nebuchadnezzar, and other people to interpret the dreams and the visions that they've had. And he's done it very accurately, and he's been rewarded for that. And that's why he's got further and further up the chain in the royal household. But Nebuchadnezzar in 539 has passed away, and there's a new king. It's actually a crown prince, but he is going to be the king. And his name is Belshazzar. Belshazzar. Now, when I was at school and I did O-level music, we had to study a piece of music called Belshazzar's Feast. And it's by William Walton. And you've really got to be in the mood for it, because it's quite an interesting piece of music. But we had to study it. We had to go through the score, the big pieces of paper that the conductor flips through, and he's got access to all the instruments and what they're playing at any given time. And we had to learn the score of Belshazzar's Feast, amongst other things. So in 539, Belshazzar had a feast. So he's now the leader of Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar's died, and Belshazzar's taken over. And at this time, Daniel must have been approaching 60, around that kind of age. And he turned out to be the last king, not Daniel, Belshazzar turned out to be the last king of the Babylonian Empire. So he held a feast for 1,000 of his nobles, his lords, their wives, the concubines. He held this big feast, and he was getting carried away with the musicians, with the music, with the wine and everything that was flowing. And he thought, this is looking quite good for me. Let's take it one step further. What we're going to do is I command you to bring out to this feast, to this party, I command you to bring out the vessels, the holy religious vessels that we seized from the temple in Jerusalem, God's holy vessels, golden vessels taken from the temple. Let's take these out and we'll drink from those because I'm greater than anything. And he pumped himself right up. So he commanded the golden vessels, the sacred vessels from Jerusalem that had been captured, be brought out to drink from. And they all started worshipping gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. All the things that have no soul, all the things that are inanimate, they cannot move, they cannot achieve anything. But they started worshipping gods made of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. And then all of a sudden, they noticed on a plaster wall to the side, writing on the wall. A hand was writing on the plaster on the wall nearby. And the writing said, Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parson. And nobody could read it or understand it. Belshazzar didn't know what it meant. His magicians didn't know what it meant. His advisors and his physicians and his astronomers and his wise men knew nothing of what this meant. This is a very famous painting by Rembrandt. So it got around at this banquet that Daniel was going to be the man to call for this. He's the man who's going to know and be able to unravel this. So Belshazzar called forward, Daniel, come forward, talk to me, tell us about this. If you can decipher what these words mean that nobody else can understand, what we'll do is we'll give you purple robes, robes of royalty. We'll give you a golden chain and increase your office, and you will become the third highest person to rule in this kingdom. Purple robes of royalty, gold chain, high office, the third most important person in the kingdom. Now, Daniel was able to read what the word said. And he had to think about how he was going to deal with this, because he needs to present this in a way that means that it still sits with how he feels and what he believes and how much he loves God and worships God. But he's going to be talking to a king that has done all of these things that are truly wrong. So what these words actually mean is mene. So it's mene, tekel, and parsin. Mene means numbered. God has numbered the days of your reign. It is brought to an end. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign, and he's brought it to an end. Tekel means weighed. You have been weighed in the balance and have been found wanting. You have not measured up. You have done wrong. And parsin means divided. Your kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So your days are numbered, you've been weighed in the balance and you've done wrong, and your kingdom is going to be divided between the Medes and the Persians. Mene, tekel, and parsin. And he was very, very careful about how he was going to deliver this to the king. And he decided to treat him completely royally, of course, as you should, respectfully. But he said, I don't want your robes. I don't want your golden chain. I don't want your office. I will tell you what the words mean, but I don't want any of the things that come with it. He was distancing himself from what he was about to say. He didn't want to be compared with and brought into what it meant. So he explained, your days are numbered. It's going to be brought to an end. You've done bad things, and your kingdom's going to be given to the Medes and the Persians. And that night, Belshazzar was killed. So that's really underlined exactly what was going on. So the person that took over from Belshazzar was Darius the Mede. He took over as king, and he was aged 62. King Darius. And he divided the kingdom into 120 provinces. And he appointed high officers to rule over, one for each province. And then he got Daniel and 2 others to administrate and supervise those 120 high officers and protect the king's interests, to oversee everything that's going on. So whether he liked it or not, Daniel was given these robes, he was given this chain, and he was given this position. And he was given this really high standing to really just be a couple of spaces under the king and to be able to look after the king's investments. And Daniel quickly proved himself to be more capable than any of the others. Not just those in high office, but those alongside him that were administering. He was more than capable of dealing with all of these things. And Darius made plans to place Daniel in charge over the entire empire. Now, as you can imagine, that's going to tick a few people off. There's other administrators who are looking at Daniel and saying, we've got a problem here. We need to try and find something wrong with this guy. He's been accelerated all through his life, and now he's above us, and we're subservient to him, and we're going to have to do what he says, and we're going to have to be under him, and we're really going to have to find something wrong with him. So they tried to find something wrong with the way he administered the business, the way he conducted himself, and throughout all of it, they could not find anything at all. He was trusted, and he was faithful to service. The only thing that they could find that they could try and attack was his faith and the rules of religion. That's the only thing they could find. How many people do we think, well, maybe we already know. How many people do we know who behave like that now? They don't like how somebody's getting on. So they'll find any way possible they can to try and undermine them and try and get rid of them, take them out of office, whether it be politics, whether it be within the place where people work, or in a town or a city. There's all of these things still go on today. So they went to King Darius and they got him to agree to a new law. And the law was, they went to Darius and they said, Darius, Your Highness, there are people out there who are not worshipping and serving you. They are worshipping and serving other gods and other idols, and they need to be brought into check. So what you need to do is you need to bring in a new law which says that for the next 30 days, nobody can worship anything or anybody other than you for 30 days. And Darius thought, that sounds quite reasonable, that sounds quite right. But the penalty for this must be death. Anybody who does this, it must be death by the lion's den, thrown to the lions. So Darius thought, yeah, I like the sound of this. So he agreed and he signed the order and it went out. Now Daniel heard this, and as we've already said, his allegiance was to God, not to anybody walking human on this earth. So he decided to go home and do what he always did. He went up to his room, opened the windows towards Jerusalem, and he prayed to God, asking for help, asking for guidance, asking for protection. And he went home and he prayed to our God. And those administrators that were trying to catch him out, for them, he fell right into their hands. They went to his house and they found him praying. So they marched straight back to Darius and they said, Darius, do you remember that law that you brought in recently? You know, the one that says that nobody is allowed to worship or pray to anything other than you for 30 days. He said, yes, I remember that law. I remember it well. And he said, do you remember signing it and putting your seal on it and making it law? He said, yeah, absolutely. And they said, well, your friend, Daniel, has been disobeying it. We've caught him praying to God, in his room, and is in direct conflict to your law. And Darius was thinking, I don't feel very happy about this. I'm in conflict because I like Daniel. Daniel's a good man. But now I've created this law and now I have to be seen to enforcing it. I don't know what I'm going to do. So he said to the administrators, okay, leave it with me. And he thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to get Daniel out of this predicament? Because I don't want this to happen to him. He's too valuable and faithful to me. So he paced about all evening. He refused food. He refused entertainment. And the administrators came back to him in the evening and said, what are we going to do then? This is your law. You can't back down on it. It's the law of the Mede and the Persians. You've signed it. You've sealed it. It has to take place. And eventually they pestered him so much that he agreed and said, okay, go and get Daniel, and we go to the lions. So they seized Daniel and they took him to the lion's den. They bound him up and he was placed into the den of lions. And Darius said, let's hope your God protects you. Let's hope your God oversees you and protects you from harm and from danger. And the den was sealed with a big rock and with the seal of Darius, and they all went away. And Darius did not sleep that night. He paced about all night thinking, I don't know how this is going to come out. I don't know what's going to happen. Surely he's going to be ripped to shreds. They went back early the next day. Darius was at the front. He was there. And he shouted, Darius, are you there? And Darius shouted, yes, I am. I'm okay. Everything's fine. I have not been scratched. I've been protected by God. And Darius was jubilant. Get this stone off of here. Get this seal broken. Get the stone off. Get him out. And they brought him out. And he was completely unscathed. He had sent an angel and he had protected Daniel throughout this trial. Not one scratch on his body. The lions' mouths were kept closed. And even though they couldn't bite him, they didn't even attack him because there was an angel in there overseeing and protecting him. God was truly working with Daniel and rewarding him for his allegiance, his faithfulness to God. He trusted God and he gave himself to God, even in the knowledge that he could or would die. His faith was such that he was prepared to do that. And then the administrators were rounded up. All the people, Darius rounded up all the people who had made this trickery take place. And they and their wives and their children were thrown into the lion's den, and all of them were torn to pieces before they even hit the floor. All immediately killed. So Darius was jubilant, and Daniel was stood beside him, and Daniel made a declaration. And this is what it says in the Bible that Daniel said. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So what a fantastic example Daniel has set for God in the human world. He's done such that he's impressed the king, and the king has made this declaration over his entire kingdom. Daniel stayed true. No matter what everybody else around him was telling him or ordering him or demanding him to do in relation to his allegiance to God, he said, no, I am not going to do what you want me to do, even if I get killed for it. My allegiance and my faith is in God and God alone, nobody else. Even if I die, I put my faith, my trust in God. There is no other, and I will die for him. Wow. And then the declaration by the king, who has witnessed all of this, and it was all done at his hand, saying, look everybody, look at what's happened. Daniel is alive. His God, our God, we must tremble before him because he is in charge and nothing can touch it. What a fantastic relationship there. So we're going to leave the Old Testament for the moment. What a declaration of faith. What a declaration of faith that Daniel had. And I want to talk to you a little about something that's happened to me more recently. Where I've had a trial, not by lions. We don't have many of them over here, thankfully. And in the time before I knew God, I came to him properly here 3 years ago. I kind of thought I had this relationship with God, but it was on my terms, and I've mentioned that before. And why I say it was on my terms, it was because I turned to him whenever I needed something, whenever I was scared or fearful. Not for relationship particularly, but a one-way thing saying, I need help. Come and help me. Come and help me work through this. So it was more of a demand than a friendship or a relationship. And all through my working life, I've been a shift worker. I left school at 16 and I went into engineering. I learned how to fix high-speed trains. Electronically, electrically, and eventually, and latterly mechanically as well. Fix and repair all of these intercity 125s as they were then. And I worked for British Rail. And all that time, just outside my apprenticeship, all that time I worked shift work, earlys, lates and nights. And then at 25 I joined the police service. And for 26 years I was a frontline police officer, out in uniform every day, shift worker, earlys, lates and nights. And all of that time, from the age of about 20, it meant that I had to work Sundays. It meant that I would work a Saturday night into a Sunday morning. It meant that I would work a day shift during the day on a Sunday. It meant that I would work from Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening. And it meant that I would also work from Sunday nights into Monday mornings. So there's several shifts that would take me through Sundays, and that's what I worked. And for me, it became the norm. And it's become part of what I've been all my life. I've been doing it since I was 20, and now I'm 57. So it's been quite a while, a long time. And more recently, we've set up a business. Some of you will know that I'm an animal portrait artist. I paint people's dogs, horses, and cats. Not in emulsion, I paint them on paper. Okay, so I do animal portraits. And we've been used to going to shows and big events. Royal Cornwall Show, that's over a weekend. Game fairs, where people, and equestrian events, dog shows, anything that's animal related, we've been going to shows that rely, in order to get business, to sell prints and paintings that I've done, but also to get commissions to paint more dogs, more horses and things like that. So this has been our life for a long time. And then 3 years, I got saved here. And then more latterly, we've taken this little hut in Porthleven. On the harbour side in Porthleven, they got a row of 5 huts. They're roughly, well, they're not even 3 metres by 3 metres, but it's the kind of beach hut where you would open up on a beachfront, slightly bigger than the normal one where you get changed and dive into the sea. There's 5 of these huts, and we've taken one of those. And we've taken the lease on that from Easter this year until the end of this month. And we've been spending six days a week there, sometimes 7. And that brings me on to what I want to talk about. Over the time that we've been at this hut, there's been a lot of pressure on Sarah, and I in particular, about the use of this hut. Not that we're not welcome, because everybody loves what we do. It's the fact that on Sundays, it's not being used. And it could be used. We've got the lease on it, but their perspective is that on Sundays it could be used, but it's not being used, it's locked up. People will come along and put their stuff in front of our hut, but we're not there. And people are even saying, oh, of course, you don't work Sundays, do you? And I'm thinking, okay, you could have put that in a slightly different way, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. And some of them are even saying, well, can we use your hut? If you're not there, can we use it? We're desperate. We want to make money throughout the season. We need to make money while the sun shines. We've got winter to think of. We need to be there, and we need somewhere to trade. Everywhere else is taken. Can we have your hut? And we're going, well, no, because we've got all our stuff in there, ready to trade again on the Monday morning. So we can't take all of that out. And they're going, oh, yeah. Well, maybe next year, maybe next season, we can have your Sunday, and you can do whatever you want the rest of the week. So they're not interested in us. They're interested in their own personal gain and how it all works. And I've been put in a real dilemma. I don't know. Having worked Sundays all this time, I've been thinking, how am I going to deal with this? And I thought, yeah, there is money to be made here on a Sunday. You know, people have come to us on Monday and Tuesday and saying, oh, you should have been here on Sunday. There's people all over the place. People are in Porthleven. The sun's been out. I haven't been able to keep up with the sales. Now I'm thinking, going, winter, what am I going to do about winter? What am I going to do? This is the first time we've done this. How am I going to make sure we've got enough money in the bank? How am I going to make sure we've got enough money to pay all our bills? How am I going to make sure that we're going to make it through to the next season? And I asked God, what should I do about it? And I didn't get anything. And I thought, thank you. Thank you. So I made a decision in my mind. I thought, I'm going to do a particular Sunday. I'm going to work a particular Sunday. Now, if I don't make a penny, or if I make very little, that's a clear indication to me that God doesn't want me to work on Sundays. But if I make loads of money, maybe he's saying to me, it's fine. So I tried to negotiate my way through this and think that's what I'm going to do. Because I was looking for some kind of other guidance, which wasn't happening. I was waiting for some shard of light, some lightning bolt, some vision that never came. So the irony of this is when Charles, on that Sunday morning, when he was delivering that preach on observing the Sabbath, I was in Porthleven trading. The irony is not lost on me. He knows what he's doing, even if I don't, and I clearly don't or didn't. So Charles is here preaching, and I'm there working. And even this morning, I'm here preaching, and everybody else is there. Everybody's out on a Sunday morning, not at church, going about, spending money, and all my colleagues, all the other people are there trading, making lots of money. But you know what, today I can stand here and say, that's fine. That is fine, because things have changed. Things have changed. So the reason I made a decision to work, and this is important, it's not because I was rebelling or ignoring or trying to go against God. And it was not in defiance or because I was feeling angry or negative about anything. It was trying to ensure provision for the winter and trying to keep the bank healthy and ensure the bills paid and think about Christmas and about fuel and about, not just petrol in the car these days, but now the way gas and electricity and everything's going. I've not done it this way before, and I was trying to do the provision. So I went to work. For 7 hours, I made more money than I've ever made in one day anywhere. I made more money in one day in the 7 hours than I've ever made anywhere in my entire business life. I made over £1,000. Now, to some people in business, that might think, that's not a great amount. But to me, that's a small fortune. So we made all this money, and people were coming and coming and da-da-da. But you know what? I drove home that night, and I felt really hollow. I felt really hollow. And all of a sudden, the pennies started to drop as to what was going on. Because the enemy was at work. He's not just a man in red with horns and a lovely goatee, with a flaming torch and a big cloak swirling around, shouting loudly. He can come as the thing you think you want most of all, the thing that you think you really need, and the answer to problems. So we've got to be really guarded. He can come across as the thing you think you want most in this world. And that's how he portrayed himself to me. And I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, to me, that's what happened. I got hooked in, and that's what happened. And that's why when I left, I felt hollow, because it dawned on me and the realization, because the enemy does not want me here. He doesn't want me here. He wants to keep me away from church, away from growth in God, away from relationship in God, away from my family. That's you guys, because you're my brothers and sisters in Christ. He wants to keep me away from you. And he tempts me with insecurity, and he tempted me with money, and he tempted me with reliance on humanity and what people were saying, and on him. So, a couple of weeks ago, that particular week after, I felt really low. And I said to God, I've let you down. I've let you down. I'm really sorry. And for someone who stands at the front here and preaches or delivers a message, that made me feel really, really low. So when I came here the following Sunday, I was not in the best frame of mind. I was very hollow, very beaten, very bruised, not by him, by myself. Understandably and necessarily, because it was necessary for me to feel like that. And we went through the worship, and at the end we were asked anybody to come out to the front, and the message had been talking to me all the way through, saying, and I felt God saying to me, stop it. You're one of my children. You've learned the lesson. You're forgiven. So enjoy, come in, worship, enjoy. And Charles asked people to come out to the front, and I was there. Poof. Charles came to me, and I just felt myself bending down, doubling down. My hands were on my knees. I was right down here. And I was just a burden, and just felt him cleansing me. And Charles hit a point where he said that we rebuke the devil, and we get him to flee from you like we have this morning. And I rose. Boy, did I rise. I was full of strength and power in God's name. And this morning I've sensed him, while what's been going on this morning, I've sensed the devil fleeing in different directions. He cannot stay, because this is God's house. God is here boy, has God been here this morning? Yes? This is God's house, and what happened this morning is incredible, so valuable, and full of love and power. And I felt the devil fleeing in different directions. He cannot stay. And on that Sunday, the devil could not stay. So, faith to me is this. Can we put it up there? Right. Faith. And and this is a simplified version because that's how it needs to work with me. Because I need things simple. So it's trust and handing over to God, surrendering to his grace and power. They are inseparable. You can't trust somebody and not give them, not hand over, not release yourself. That is what trust is. I trust you. I know that I'm in good hands. I know that there's nowhere else I need to be. And you can't surrender or hand yourself over unless you trust them. It works both ways. They're inseparable. So over the last couple of weeks, certainly since that revelation to me on the way home from market and on here that following week, the revelation to me is about what I must do and how I must do things. So I'm not going to work Sundays anymore. Because God says to me, work hard, but don't work any harder. Just trust more. It's not about working harder. It's about trusting more. And you know what? I've come off the gas. I've stepped off the gas work-wise. I've got all these things to do. I've now, as of today, got 28 commissions that I need to paint for people. 28 paintings I've got to do. That takes me until the middle of May next year. So if we're talking about provision, and we're talking about the market in Porthleven, and me and the business and trading, then God's got me covered. Okay? So, don't work harder, trust God more. I stood here recently and I said, you've got to have 1 foot on earth, humanity, 1 foot in heaven. I'm not arrogant enough to assume that this foot is already there because that's for God to decide. But that's how we must rationalize it. Okay, so for me, the reason I was able to stay up and say that last week is because my weight is shifting. And they've got to continue shifting until a point where you've literally got to step through. And then you walk in. And when you walk in one way. You're walking to God. We're not going to trip over anything that's behind us because we're not going that way. We're moving forward. God's got us covered. And that's what I was getting at about that, about shifting weight. When we come from not knowing God and we're reliant on humanity and what humanity says we've got to do and how we've got to live things and how we've got to work, how we've got to... I'm not saying we disobey laws. What I'm saying is that like Daniel, we must decide that God is the most important thing and how he wants us to live and how we work and what we do. And the fact that we come here every Sunday is so important that it overrides all the other things. And that the weight is going to shift because I'm heading towards you, God. I'm not going to say I'm coming for you, God. I'm coming towards... Because if I am coming for you, God, I want to wrap my arms around you. Such is my love for you. So my weight is shifting. And I kind of feel in my life, I'm about here. So humanity, heaven and God. I kind of feel myself here. Oh, don't get me wrong. I could easily do that because I need to keep growing. It doesn't just stop. It's got to keep moving. And it doesn't matter how slowly that moves. As long as it's moving forward, that's all that matters. So don't work harder. Trust God more. So I'm not going to work Sundays anymore. Now, the reason I'm saying it here is because if you say things in private, you can kind of slide back. Because nobody knows. Nobody knows. If you say things in public, you guys are aware of it. And you're going to help me do this, aren't you? Yes. Thank you very much. So, and what this also means, it's a big thing for me. Because I'm handing my business. I've always worked for God. Since I've been saved, I've always worked for God. This is not my business, it's his business. And I work for him. But it's a big thing for me. Because to have faith in business, what I've started saying to these other traders on a Sunday, since I've made this decision, is, oh, of course, you're not going to be here on Sunday, are you? No, I'm not, because I'm going to be in church. Because my faith is in God, and I need to observe Sunday as his day of rest. Instead of saying, I don't work Sundays because of my faith, I need to embellish that because I need to promote, and I need to be what King Darius said. I need to be saying to people, no, I'm not coming next Sunday because I'm spending my time with God. And if that makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but I'm just telling you the truth. So the shift, I'm not embarrassed, I'm not ashamed, I'm not worried. I'm happy to declare these things because I know how I feel in my heart and in my mind. So another reason why this is going to be difficult is because there's no more shows at weekends. So there's no more Royal Cornwall. There's no more game fairs. There's no more equestrian. There's no more dog shows. There's no more of those things that would normally bring money into me. But I must not worry about tomorrow. I must not worry about next week. I must not worry about next year because I trust the one who is already there, making a way for me. I trust the God, the same God of Daniel, who is alive and here, and who is alive today and will be alive forever. That same God will make a way for me. Like he always has done. Before I knew God, he was looking after me. And the way you look back before you were saved, the things he's done for you. I'm watching the time, but I need to tell you something. When I first started out in business, I booked all these shows, all at different times. And then all of a sudden, one January, they all wanted paying all of it in one go. All of them in the same month. And I had to pay out £2,500. And all of a sudden, I'm now £2,500 light on my bills. I don't know where that money's going to come from. I'm thinking at that time, the credit card's going to have to come out and I'm going to have to find a way of rebuilding and chipping away at it. But I spoke to God and I said, Father, I am £2,500 down this month. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Please help me. Help me deal with this. I don't want to go to a credit card. I don't want to go into debt. Please, can you help me with this? I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet this month. And within 5 days, I got an email. Not from God. I got an email from a man I'd never met, and I still haven't met him, a man in Australia. And the reason for the email is he was commissioning me to paint 4 huge paintings. A lobster, mackerel, John Dory, and spider crab. 4 big paintings to go to Australia, to a man I'd never met before. And I said to Sarah, look at this. And she said, well, and I said, well, what are we going to ask him? How much are we going to charge? I said, I don't know. Anyway, we negotiated, and very quickly we agreed the terms. And these 4 paintings, he was going to pay me £5,000, and he was going to give me half of it up front. What do you think of those potatoes? Yeah? So I knew then, and I knew he could do it then, and that's how, along with everything else that's happened in this journey, I know that it can happen again. So, Daniel's story is a triumph of faith, the same today as it was then. If we have true faith, we grow more courageous every single day. To trust God is to have immeasurable peace. To know that you're covered, to know that he's got your back, to know that he'll never let you down, to know that he's always there. He's always working things out for you, and that you are so loved and that he delights in us. Wow. He could have walked away from me so many times in my life. If he was just a mere mortal human being, he's the kind of person that would have said, you know what, Andy, I've had enough. You're on your own. But he's never has. His faithfulness to me has been unending. It's never been quavered. It's never been in dispute. And this is how my faith is changing to him. So in this land, like Daniel, I refuse to conform to the expectations which take me away from God and his word. So, your money or your life? Do I trade and do I worry about the business? Or do I worship the God who is control of all of it? That's where your money or your life comes from today. So can we pray?